Eddie Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Gentleman for Hammersmith. Although I'm not one of the lost sheep that he referred to, having only been an MP for 7 months, I'm just a keen, enthusiastic advocate for the bill in its present form. Although, Madam Deputy Speaker, before I turn to the bill, I would be grateful if you would convey to Mr Speaker my best wishes for his birthday. The Moonpig card, personally designed by me, that I ordered earlier this week, has not arrived, so he'll have to settle for just me verbally thanking him. Anyway, turning...
Gentleman clearly has an encyclopedic knowledge of people's birthdays. It will possibly not have escaped him that it is the Speaker's chaplain's birthday today. Rose Hudson-Wilkins, would he not join in all sides of the House in wishing her the happiest birthday as well?
I thank my honourable friend for his wisdom and for imparting...
Order. We will just take this moment to wish the Speaker's chaplain a happy birthday and to wish Mr Speaker a happy birthday. We won't divide. I will assume that the entire House wishes to send their best wishes both to Mr Speaker and to Rose. And now the matter's been dealt with. Eddie Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Turning back to the bill, or at least nearly, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Westminster North for bringing this bill today, and I'm going to be seeking her advice in the very near future because I had a private member's bill myself that was listed for consideration today with regard to carbon monoxide safety in the House. I'm grateful to Project Shout for helping me publicise that bill earlier this week, and I'm also grateful for members on both sides of the House, particularly those members opposite. So I was supported by the member for Ipswich, Swansea East, Wolverhampton South West, to name but a few. So I would be seeking some advice as to how I move my bill on in the future. Thanks to the support of those people and Project Shout, I was able to secure a meeting with the new Housing Minister yesterday, and he had convinced me the government would give some consideration to it, so we'll be able to return to that topic another day. Now, I get to my feet this morning to contribute with a speech, but if this was an essay, I guess it would be entitled, "It's Not Always Easy Being a Landlord." And my perspective with regard to this is threefold. So firstly, I am myself an accidental landlord. Immediately before coming to this house, I was the Assistant Chief Exec of YMCA Birmingham, a small housing association, obviously, in Birmingham, and I am currently the Chair of the Board of WHG, a housing association with 20,000 homes, mostly in Walsall, but operating across 18 separate local authorities. So I have three separate perspectives. So with my own personal perspective, I'm an accidental landlord. When I married my wife and we bought a house together, she already had a house. She didn't have complete faith in the longevity of our relationship, obviously. So she decided that it would be appropriate for her to hang on to that house just in case things didn't turn out for the best. So now we've got a property that we rent out. It's often the case that people inherit a property, but what they don't inherit with that property is any understanding of building regs or safety and matters that would mean that they'd be able to keep that property while they're renting it out in good condition. Indeed, I think there is a ridiculous statistic that says something like 95% of landlords in this country only have one property. So how would they get the knowledge that they need in order to ensure that they're maintaining that property appropriately? My own personal case, obviously, as the Chair of the Board of a housing association with some professional experience, I feel I've personally got the knowledge, but there are many other landlords who wouldn't. And it is not the tenant's fault if their landlord doesn't have sufficient experience to know how to maintain that property, and they should have some redress through law. And that's why I'm delighted, as a personal landlord myself, that this bill is going to afford tenants the opportunity to seek that redress should it be necessary. Now, as I said, immediately before coming to the House, I was Assistant Chief Exec of YMCA Birmingham, 300 units of accommodation for previously homeless young people. And some of those young people lead chaotic lives, to say the least. So we had a 72-bed direct access hostel in Northfield, which was definitely the ugly sister of our portfolio. And I'm delighted to say that just before I left YMCA, we'd been awarded £800,000 from the HCA to address the ground floor of that hostel to ensure that we could install some ensuite accommodation and some training facilities and better cooking facilities, because although the accommodation was passable and clearly legally compliant, if you've come out of prison or straight off the street...
Member giving way on this matter. And is it not also right that this bill will extend huge safety to the large number of children who reside within unfit habitation and help narrow the educational gap and health gap as a very priority of what a good life should be?
Absolutely.
Well, I would like to completely endorse the comments of the Honourable Member opposite. And I say, at YMCA, we would take people from 16 years old, sometimes previously looked after children. So yeah, it was incredibly important that that accommodation was of the highest standard. And I say, I'm grateful for the HCA giving YMCA that money to allow us to do that.
The honourable gentleman would accept the point that also a safe and secure environment does have a regard to carbon monoxide detectors in that accommodation. He and I have campaigned for that for many, many months, and it is a high priority that people do not die from that silent killer.
I completely endorse those comments, and as you say, that silent killer, carbon monoxide gas, you can't see it, smell it or taste it, and so the best way to protect yourself from any problems there would be to install an audible carbon monoxide detector. Thank you for that endorsement of my bill, I think. Also, with regard to the HCA, at YMCA, we'd been given £1 million to build new build accommodation at our site, at the site in Erdington. And when I was working on that project, I was approached by one of our tenants who asked that I try to find him some employment on the building site, which I did. I offered my support, and the company arranging the construction offered considerable support. And then all of a sudden, that tenant disappeared. We didn't see him turning up for work for a few days. And when I went to see him in his room, I found he'd had some mental health problems and had smashed up his room completely, causing considerable damage, which brings me to one of the exemptions of the bill, because clearly in a situation like that there is a different case at play. It is not that the property has not been maintained appropriately by the landlord, but that the tenant hasn't lived in the property in a way that is appropriate for the property. So sometimes it is not necessarily the case that the landlord isn't maintaining it properly. Sometimes it is the fact that the tenant hasn't treated the property appropriately. And finally, I would just like to move on to my tenure as chair of the board of Walsall Housing Group. This is a housing association with 20,000 homes. So clearly they have the facilities and the money to ensure that they are maintaining their stock properly. But at any given time, it may be the case that up to 10 of those properties do not have a current gas certificate. That's not because we haven't been diligent in ensuring that there is a certificate for the property, but because we haven't been able to get access to that property. And sometimes the only course of redress then is to seek legal access, which can go on for many months and cost thousands and thousands of pounds. I heard of a case this morning where we have a tenant who is in prison, and yet we still cannot gain access to the property in order to service the boiler because the courts are saying that we need to consider further action. So, although it could be possible that you are a completely diligent landlord, it might still not be possible to maintain the property to the standard that you would expect. So I think in the broad range of experience that I've got, it is often the case that landlords do their very best to maintain a property in a fit and proper state, but sometimes that's not the case. And where it isn't the case, we need legislation that ensures that tenants are protected. This government has tenant safety as a very high priority. We've seen that in the work that's been carried out since Grenfell. We'll continue to deliver on that. And for my own part, in all the various guises of my landlord responsibility, I'll continue to discharge my duties as well.